Hi, my name's David Sandridge. This is my webcam post for week 2. This week we were supposed to read 2 plays, The Octoroon by Mr. Dion, and I won't attempt his last name. I'm not French and I'm sure I would butcher it, and Margret Fleming by James Hearn. So the topic we were asked to consider this week was, what are the thematic differences you see in Margret Fleming and The Octoroon? How do they reflect the time periods in which they were written? How are underrepresented populations depicted in this era? So, as far as the thematic differences go, I'll just give a little bit of a back story, I guess. The Octoroon took place in the pre-Civil War era, with sort of featuring a guy, George, who inherited half of the plantation. And he came down there. Long story short, he fell in love with this pretty young lady who was a Tamaroon, 1/8 black. And their marriage was just super taboo at the time because it was predating the Civil War when the story was written by 2 years in 1859. And things just kind of escalate from there. Murder, suicide. It's just real rash and rough, kind of like the South when the tensions were building before the Civil War. Whereas Margret Fleming took place in 1890, 25 years after the Civil War. And things were a little less abrasive. It kind of just took place mostly in the man's office and then in his bedroom. And it followed Mr. Fleming, and he's sitting in his office, and a doctor comes in and starts telling him that, well, he had a kid with another lady, an illegitimate kid, a bastard child, if you would. And so that's kind of the issue. Him and his wife are dealing with his infidelity. So they both kind of cover just drastically different things. One has to do with freedom of people. The other one has to do with infidelity and how one treats that. And like I said, the time periods, well, the Octoroon was written before the start of the Civil War in 1859, and Margret Fleming was written after the Civil War in 1890. And the Civil War was from 1861 to 1865. And then the last part of the topic that we were asked to consider was, how are underrepresented populations depicted in this era? And I think that, especially in Margret Fleming, women were still very much fighting for their rights, and I feel like he kind of hit a good nail on the head there with the quote that his wife made about when she was like, how would you feel if I was unfaithful to you? And he was all upset, and then she said, it's the same thing for me. I'm upset also. It's polluted, the marriage she was talking about. And so there's that. Whereas the South, the underrepresented populations were, I'd say, more than just Zoe being African American, I'd say it was the Indian boy. He wasn't represented at all and just drastically mistreated. They thought just because he was killed with a tomahawk that it had to have been the Indian. It couldn't have been anybody else. And so that's my webcam post for week 2. My name's David Sandridge. Thank you.